Hello and Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. Welcome to Muslim Women in Rail, brought to you by Muslims in Rail. Muslims in Rail are a network of professional Muslims. Muslims in Rail are a network of professional Muslims working within the rail industry. Thank you for choosing to spend your evening with us as we speak to a panel of truly inspiring individuals this evening. Before going into introductions, I would like to say a massive thank you to Faiza, who is a graduate in within Network Rail, for really bringing this event together. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to Hassan, who's in the background doing the admin and making sure that this event runs smoothly. So to begin with, my name is Sultana. I am the safeguarding manager working within MTR Elizabeth line. If we go around the room and if I introduce each of our panel. So if I start with Irum, please.
So Irum Malik, I'm a partner working for Arcadis. I've been in the industry about 25 years now, working mainly as an economist and management consultant through the whole infrastructure sector, so rail, but also in the highway sector.
Thank you. If we can move to Laura, please.
Hello, I'm Laura Alfred. I'm a Senior Communications Manager for Network Rail. I've worked in rail for about 8 years, starting my career in small startups, so very different environments. Within my time in Network Rail, I also became Muslim and a headscarf wearer, so I hope to share my experience with you today.
Thank you, Laura. And Zainab, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Zainab. I work at Arcadis as well with Irum, but I'm in the safety and risk management team within Arcadis, and I've been working there for around 8 years.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our panel members. So we've got a select questions that we'll be asking our panel, our speakers to answer. Hopefully the answers will provide an insight into their personal journeys in the rail industry and give us a bit of insight into how they got to where they are today. So the first question I'd like to ask is, what is your career journey and what was your inspiration for joining the industry? So if we go to each of the panel members, so this time if we start with Zainab, please.
Hi, okay, yes. So I started as a graduate within Arcadis. My background is chemical engineering, so I actually was in the oil and gas field for the safety and risk management team. And in around like 2 or 3 years after that, I transitioned into the rail industry. So it wasn't actually my first choice, but the applications that I use in the safety risk management team is the same as railway industry. So I was able to transition smoothly to that industry. So it's a good industry to work in, but it wasn't my my goal to work in the railway industry as a start, because as I said, I was a chemical engineering graduate.
Thank you, Zainab. And what a great industry it is to work in, like you mentioned, with an abundance of opportunities. Thank you. Next, if we go to Irum, please.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us have fallen into this industry. I definitely fell into it a bit as a graduate. When I was looking around for a job after I graduated, it was a role advertised as an economist for a construction trade association. And so that's what I went and did. I've worked as a journalist, used to work with Building Magazine, doing their economics for them. Worked with some big consultancy firms as well, but all focused on the infrastructure sector. And then I worked for Bureau Happold for about 6 years, where I worked on international development projects and mainly in public sector clients in the infrastructure sector. And then with Arcadis, my career has really been focused again on management consultancy, but also looking at transformational change. How do we improve services we offer? How do we improve client experience? And how do we make our industry more diverse and more inclusive?
Thank you, really interesting, thank you. And finally, Laura, please.
So my academic background, I guess, has always been interested in people. So I actually studied sort of business psychology. And I suppose that love of influencing people found me into a job of communication. So as I mentioned, I started in startup companies, which is quite a diverse, quite family kind of feel in that startup industries. and I worked in those for my earliest of careers, and then I moved into Network Rail, as I mentioned, 8 years ago. I didn't really know anything about the railway, to be honest with you. It wasn't that dragged me into it. I guess it was the attraction of the role, of learning more about the communication sphere and doing that in a big company, which found me there. But since being in there, I've managed to progress. Network Rail's got around sort of 35,000 employees, so a nice place to be if you like people or interested in people. Lots of them to learn from and to learn what not to do as well, I guess, which is fantastic. And I found myself working as a senior communications manager, and I'm now working on Track Worker Safety Task Force, which is one of our biggest programs around track worker safety, which is obviously really important to so many people within the industry and the families of people who put their lives at risk. So it's a really fulfilling role to do. And as I said, I'm not a railway person. It wasn't that dragged me to it, but actually being in there as a communicator, it's really fulfilling.
Thank you, Laura. And just to give a bit of background into myself, so I've been in the rail industry for about 5.5 years. Prior to joining the industry, I was at university studying criminology. I did a work placement with British Transport Police, looking at sexual offences on public transport, something which isn't spoken about and fortunately doesn't happen very often. Then I found myself working within community engagement for MTR Elizabeth Line, worked myself up to a team leader, and now I sit in the security team, looking after suicide prevention, trespass, and various areas of vulnerabilities. Just to the audience, please utilize the chat box function. Please do, if you have any questions, put it in the chat box and we'll pick up any questions at the end. So in line with Choose to Challenge theme, I'll just jump into our first question. So to our panel, could you talk about any barriers you face within the workplace and how you overcame it? So if I go to Zainab first, please.
Yes. Okay. So, as I said, I've been working in Arcadis since I was a graduate in the safety and risk management team as a safety consultant. And when I first started, I was actually a hijab-wearing Muslim. So I did start without wearing a hijab, and it was only a few years ago that I actually decided to start wearing a hijab full-time. And I was quite apprehensive for the first day at work going into the office, because obviously within my team, they weren't aware of me wearing hijab. They were aware as a Muslim. I practice the religion. I fast during Ramadan and I do my prayers in the office. But in terms of actually covering my hair was a different game altogether. So I was apprehensive actually going into the office that day. But fortunately, I went in and there was no actually any comments regarding my scarf or my hijab or anything like that. So I just carried on with working. I can say personally that that's probably like a positive experience for me. It means that they weren't taken aback too much, well, in my face anyway. No, there were no comments towards me. I didn't have a conversation with anybody regarding the reasons why I started wearing a hijab or anything like that. So it was positive in that way, but obviously not actually having any comments or even discussing or sitting me down to even ask me any reasons why I decided to actually wear a hijab. It could have just been that they were uncomfortable actually having the conversation or didn't know what the right things to say. But overall, it was a positive experience, and it could be, like I said, they were aware that I was a practicing Muslim, so that might have just eased their way to seeing me like this. So overall, positive experience.
Sure, thank you, Zainab. And you mentioned that wearing the hijab and starting to wear the hijab in the workplace after working within Arcadis for a fixed period, that you would have thought. Sorry, I have screens in the background, so the light just turned off. Sorry, so you mentioned that you began wearing hijab within after a while working within Arcadis, but no one really had any comments or any questions for you. Why do you think no one really picked this up? Is it a matter of feeling a bit awkward, or sort of not knowing how to address this? And I'll open this up to the panel if anyone has any comments.
Yeah, I've got some comments around that, if that's all right, Sultana. So because I do a lot of work around diversity and inclusion, there's a real fear out there with people. If they say the wrong thing, they might offend people. And so even though they're curious and they've got questions, they're scared to ask them. And what we say to our people is ask the question and be honest with someone. When you're talking to them, say to them, look, I'm not sure how to ask this question. I don't want to offend you, but I'm really curious about this. So can I ask? And then we're asking all the recipients of those questions to take them as they're intended, which is they're about curiosity and really wanting to know the information and grow and develop as a person, as opposed to something that's offensive. And so I think it's really important for everyone that if someone asks you a question, really think about why they're asking the question. If it's from a knowledge point of view, be open and answer that question. If the language they use is slightly off, then help them with that language. Because what we need to do in order to help people develop is get rid of that whole fear around having the conversation.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. That's really interesting point to note. Thank you. And Laura, I noticed that you went off mute. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think just to echo what Irum was saying there, I'm also a reverse mentor to an executive leader in Network Rail. And the purpose behind that is for them to understand what it's like to be a woman of colour in Network Rail, which is traditionally a very white middle class organisation and male at that. So one of the big things that came out is that reluctance to say the wrong thing and to offend. And, you know, I was a practicing Muslim before I put my headscarf on, but no one really expects it from Laura Alfred. So when I came in that day with my headscarf on, I hadn't really thought it through. I thought, if I don't do it now, I just want to do it. I'm going to wear it today. And that was all I sort of said to myself. But I worked with the same people with and without the headscarf and being noticeably Muslim. And I did see a change in how people spoke to me. It wasn't rudeness or anything like that, but it was this avoidance. The same people I was sitting in a room with the week before, I could see were notably fearful if they were left in a room with me alone. And it was really something I had to adjust to, actually, because it dented my confidence a bit, because I'd never experienced that sort of interaction before, or that sort of response to me. So I do think that none of it was meant with malice. That was the most important thing I think I'd like to share, is it was just that fear of saying the wrong thing and not knowing how to broach the conversation. They're probably thinking so much, don't mention the headscarf, that it stops them from thinking of anything else, like, does she like pizza? You know, like normal questions that we would ask, you know, anybody else. So for me, I haven't found anybody say anything to me, but I have found that the conversation and the ability to make a network around me was harder when I did put the hijab on.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that. Really insightful. And I just think from my experiences, I felt like when I first began in the industry, people felt like they were walking on eggshells around me, like they didn't know how to address the hijab. Not that it sort of hindered my performance or the way I presented myself as a person. So I felt like I had the confidence to do so, break down those barriers a little bit and sort of say, I wear my hijab as a representation of my commitment to my faith, an expression of my faith. So sometimes it's up to us to sort of start those conversations so other colleagues feel at ease. But as Irum said, absolutely, to understand these issues, you know, we should sort of feel free, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to sort of learn from any of our conversations.
So I think just to add there, Sultana, as well, it's about how we respond to when people do say the wrong thing. If we are hostile or defensive, then, you know, they're not going to ask that question again. And then their judgment around having those sort of conversations and their confidence to do it is going to be absolutely broken. So, you know, my real big tagline is kind of leave the emotional response and create an educational opportunity. When people do come to you and perhaps stumble and are a bit clumsy, support them through it, because it's that intention. You know, when somebody comes to you, whether they've come with a good or bad intention.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point to make, Laura, because if they have one bad reaction from people when they've asked a question, it's going to stop them ever asking that question again.
Yeah,
and so I think it's really, the onus is on everyone to not give that emotional response, as you say.
That's it. And that assumptions or the answers that they've maybe got in their head can't be challenged either. And they'll just keep perpetuating because they won't have any other conversation or interaction with people, perhaps.
Yep, just following on that quickly. I didn't have a bad experience at work, but I did meet up with an ex-colleague of mine, actually, for dinner after work one day. And it was somebody that I'd worked with closely while they were at the company. So when they actually did first see me, they were a bit taken aback, and they did make not a negative comment, but it was probably like a sideways comment a little bit. So that was something that I had experienced. It was quite negative there, but it didn't mean that I didn't address it, and obviously just say that this is what I've chosen to do, of course, and it's part of my religion. And it's not that they weren't aware that I was a Muslim. It's just the hijab wearing part. I actually had shown them how I used to pray, because I travel a lot, so we travel together. So they were very aware of what I do and how I practice my religion. So I think it was just the headscarf that was taken aback from them. So I had that experience outside of work.
Sure, thank you. And that, I think that actually quite nicely it goes into our next question. So I wanted to ask our panel, have you had any experiences of prejudice or exclusion? And if so, how did you overcome this experience? So Irum, if I turn to you, please.
Yeah, so I guess my worst experience happened very early on in my career, so probably about 25 years ago. And I would really hope that people haven't experienced this more recently. So I was working for a management consultancy firm at the time. And so I don't wear a headscarf, but I am fairly religious, so I don't drink. But I'm very relaxed in that I will go to a bar and I'll just have a Coke. But with this a very senior partner at this firm said to me, you either need to start drinking or you need to leave the company. Yeah, and it was different times back then, right? So I was 25, it was a long time ago, and I kind of had a bit of a panic, and I thought, well, I can't start drinking, so what shall I do? So I left the company eventually. And I guess my learning from that is, these days, that is not what I would expect someone to do. I would be horrified if anyone in our organisation, someone had said to them, you either start drinking or you leave the company, because I would want to know about that conversation occurring, and I think I'd be into a disciplinary procedure around that kind of behaviour from someone. So, but I guess my bigger learning now that I've got a bit of age and experience behind me is that, don't give up on your own values. If you're facing exclusion, still focus on who you are as a person and what your personal values are, right? Because I am living proof that you can succeed in our industry without having to conform to every stereotype someone wants you to conform to. You can be different and still do okay in our industry. So really stick to your guns in terms of what your values are. And if you're really being pressurized to do something, you're really uncomfortable with it, raise it. Don't put up with it. Don't feel you have to leave the organization. And ultimately, there will be, in a worst case scenario, there will be an organization out there that aligns to your personal values and respects those personal values. So absolutely continue to be who you are, no matter what you're up against.
Thank you, Irum. Some really good advice there. Thank you. Anyone else like to share the experiences on prejudice and overcoming?
Yeah, I think from when I started wearing my headscarf, I found that I got a lot of different comments that I'd never received before. So people assumed that I had a massive family. People assumed I've never felt that I couldn't speak English before, but so many people assumed that wasn't my first language, or that I didn't understand, and started speaking a lot slower to me, or saying things a little bit more I don't know what the word, a little bit more, see what they could get away with, pushing the boundaries a little bit more than what I'd ever experienced before. But that was in and out of work that I found. But I also think just generally as a woman in the industry, it can be quite challenging. There's lots of examples, I'm sure lots of women on this call will probably agree with, that you tend to get talked over, your idea tends to get regurgitated 5 minutes later from a man's voice, and people hear it when you said it quite clearly 5 minutes before. So there's still a lot of that. And a little bit sometimes of a kind of boys club feel. They might have nicknames and things where you'd never get one. But, you can work around that. But I also find as a woman in general, there's this opportunity of this after work culture that sometimes that can be more exclusive for and harder to break into than when you're a female, because naturally women tend to do more of the nursery pickups. They tend to do, you know, the bedtimes as a rule, and that's whatever culture that you come from. I think I saw pre-COVID women tended to do 3 times more of that domestic housework than males, and that's, as I said, through the UK. And it's supposed to have gotten worse during COVID. So the opportunities to be able to go and make those informal networks, and, you know, it's so, I can only speak from my experience, but it's so important. It seems like there's a lot of who you know and what you know to get exposure for jobs, to hear that these jobs exist, to get mentors, to get training. It really depends on your relationships with people. And that can be hard to broach when you maybe, you know, you don't want to go to the pub, or you can't go to the pub, for example, after work, or you can't go out for that meal because things tend to happen outside of work.
Sure, thank you.
Can I just build on that, because that is an issue that comes up a lot, right, about that after hours networking, and and I know it's more of an issue for women, but there's plenty of men who also, you know, they want to go home and they want to see their families. They don't want to hang around with their colleagues until 9 p.m. having dinner or going for a drink. And so, you know, we've got this real focus on how do you build your network inside of working hours. It doesn't all have to be outside of working hours. Of course, have friends and socialise if you want to, but that should absolutely, as Laura said, that should not be the be all and end all of how you build your career and how you network. But networking and knowing people in your organisation is really important as well. I think we'll probably talk about that later on. It's finding other routes to do it, and it's hard. It is definitely hard. There's no question.
Sure, thank you. Laura, you mentioned, as did you, Irum, about after hours and females typically picking up their sort of domestic duties at home. How did you overcome this in terms of networking and sort of meeting with other colleagues?
Yeah, I think it's really important to sort of put yourself out there. Actually, you have to, and I think Irum made a note to it earlier, about knowing your values, knowing who you are, and trying to make the best out of any situation that you're in. So if you are somewhere where people tend to meet outside work and you know you can't, make that extra special effort inside of work. Maybe suggest things to do inside of work. If you can't see that behaviour already there, then try and create it. Nobody's going to come in and change the world to suit you. You have to go and ask the questions and to be proactive, I think, is my biggest part of advice, and do different things and be willing to share what you're doing. So for example, you know, if Ramadan's coming up, why not talk to your team about it? Why not explain to them what you do? What's not the kind of, okay, we don't eat, but what do you do? What's your typical day like? What's your Eid like at the end? What do you do? And you'll start to get people interested because they'll see similarities in what they do, and it's more of a conversation starter rather than a preach. I think it's getting that balance. You really need to bring people along with you and to talk to them about things that, you know, are engaging, rather than telling them, you know, we do this because of that. You know, that storytelling, I think, is really important. So that would be my advice. Go and create the things that would suit you, and a lot of people would probably like it too. Like Irum said, some men don't want to do things after work, so perhaps they would like to do something at lunchtime, for example.
Thank you. And that's really useful. So actually utilising the workplace and making it a comfortable environment for yourself as well, getting across your feelings and your sort of advice and tips for other colleagues. So that's really useful. Thank you. Thank you. I know a few people are quite interested in sort of mentoring. And Laura, I know you briefly touched on this, but has anyone on the panel been mentors? What were your experiences? And how would you recommend Muslim women getting access to mentorship opportunities?
I feel like I'm talking too much, but shall I go?
Please go for it. Please do.
So I've been mentored, and I am a mentor as well. And I think it's, for me, mentoring, the person who's being mentored, there's a real onus on that person, right? You have to know what you want from your mentor. It's your career, own it. and really figure out what is it that I want a mentor to do for me, and then look around and say, who is there that has the kind of characteristics that could help me achieve the things I want to achieve. And I'm not talking about have a 25-year plan saying I'm a graduate now, I want to be a chief exec, so I'll have the chief exec mentor me. Because really, what does a chief exec remember about being a graduate and what your life was like? Probably nothing at all, right? So you are better off saying, in the next year, in the next 2 years, these are the things I really want to be able to achieve. And those are the things I want the mentor to help me with. And then look for a mentor who's a few grades above you in your organization, who's been through that, who can really help you. And try and find a mentor who kind of has a different perspective to you as well, because otherwise they're just going to tell you what you already know. So try and look at that person and be brave. Just ask the mentor. Just go and ask them, right? What's the worst that can happen? They say no. You're no worse off than before you ask them. Whereas if they say yes, then you can really test that relationship. And I guess the other piece of advice I give around mentoring is, if you have a mentoring session with someone and a second session with someone, they don't have to be your mentor for life, right? I've had different mentors at different times, and that relationship and that chemistry between you really needs to work. And so if you find you're having a few sessions and it's not really working for you, just step away from the relationship. You don't have to formally sack your mentor. You just step away from the relationship and look around and see who else there is. But all those things help you build that network. So be brave, figure out what it is you want from a mentor, look for the people in the business who can help you with those things. If you don't know them, ask people you do know that I wanted help with this. Who is it that could be a good mentor for me? And then just approach them and ask them and say, these are the specific things I want. Can you help me with them? Because from a mentor's point of view, the worst thing is someone comes to you and said, can you be my mentor? And the first question you ask is, okay, but what do you want from me? And I'll find out the best fit. And the person looks at you and they say, oh, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about it. Because that's kind of a waste of everyone's time, isn't it? So just really think about it and then be bold in terms of getting someone for yourself.
Sure, thank you. I know from our own experiences, I know Women in Rail do a fantastic mentor program, and actually I was a mentee, and I've had a few mentors in my sort of experience, and the best mentor was a male. So Seb from Rail Delivery Group, thank you if you're watching this, if you tuned in. I think my time with Seb, I really saw a real growth within myself personally, but also professionally. And within that period, I managed to sort of move roles. So that was really good. So really signposting anyone towards Women in Rail, but also look within your workplace, speak to HR, see if there's any existing sort of schemes available. And Laura, you've got quite an interesting story, I think, around coaching. Did you want to share a little bit around that?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose there's two different paths that you can take. Is mentoring, where somebody tends to have had the experience that you're looking for, and then there's coaching also, that is more about knowing yourself and knowing your values and the things that hold yourself back. And I was really keen to learn more about coaching. It's something I had been interested in a long time, and it's something that benefits someone in communications, having those conversations, open-ended questions, etc. So part of my development, I wanted to go on a coaching course, and I had looked around externally, but there was also one within the company. And part of the process was that you met somebody who was in charge of deciding who was going to go on the course or not. I think the output was that we were going to build some more internal coaches, so they would work with the senior leaders within the company. Now, this person that I met, I think they saw me coming, and they'd already made the decision that I was not somebody that they were going to put in front of leaders, because the body language that they showed me, the lack of questions, the lack of interest that I got was quite surprising and a bit disappointing, but equally it didn't faze me. As I was talking, the person had their arms behind the head, they had their feet on the table stretched out, real stereotypical kind of poses where you think, oh, you're really not interested, are you, in anything I'm actually saying. So it was I actually find it quite funny now. I mean, it's not funny because I should have been judged on what I brought to the role and asked decent questions and given them a chance to opt me out, because I'm sure there was many many things I could have said and done that made me not fit for the course. But I would have liked to have the opportunity to actually have that. But the main thing is that I really wanted to do it. So I invested in myself, and I am working towards full accreditation as a coach now. And the beauty of coaching, I guess, is that when you know yourself, you understand your values, you know who you are. It's really hard for somebody else to tell you what to do and to sway you to do different things. And there's a big space between people that need, real guidance and those that know exactly what they're doing in life. And there's all these other people in between, which many of us fall into at different times in our life. And coaching is one of those supports that can get you to grow to the next level, whilst you're investing time in learning yourself, which is the best return really that you'll ever get, and the best time you'll ever spend is bettering yourself.
Thank you, Laura. And I think well done on you for sort of grabbing hold of your future and sort of investing in yourself. I think that's really important, that we sort of do invest in ourselves, find the time to sort of grow professionally and pursue our interests. So well done to you. So I think sort of moving on to our next question, what advice would you give to other women looking to build a career within the industry? And I think Zainab, if we turn to you, please, because I know we've had previous discussions and you've got a really interesting story as to how you sort of blossomed, if I can say. So would you mind sharing your story, please?
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so as I said, being a graduate is when you started in Arcadis, and I was a typical graduate where I was just putting my head down and doing my work, ensuring my performance was well and like the quality of my work was good, and just basically being a yes woman. So anything that they give me, I'll do, just to gain experience, gain the skills and tools needed to be a safety consultant in the industry that I was working in previously, which is the oil and gas and as well the rail industry. And I was getting the benefits. I was getting promotions up to the mid-level positions, and then it kind of just stopped. And I just kind of assumed that if you're doing your work, if you're doing it well, you just get recognized. But actually, just not the case. So I decided to go on a training course. It was called Women in Engineering. Arcadis actually fully funded this training. We did it in-house. It's an external course, but was done in-house. And basically, it was just teaching me about confidence, being able to speak up, knowing actually what it is that I want to do, my career path, what I want to, the normal questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Those were the normal ones. But then also how to present. There was the tools and hints such as like Superman or Superwoman, a stance in front of the mirror to just kind of gain that confidence when you want to go into a meeting or if you know that you're presenting. And it just kind of helped me understand that, it's not just the work that you do. You also need to be able to speak up and be confident and know your worth and know what it is that you want to do in your career. So after the training, I developed a plan on how I wanted to become a senior consultant, which is where I am at the moment. So I actually went on another course just to develop my safety skills. So I went into functional safety, and that was an external course, but I had to also write my case. So within my team, we were a small team. Were considered specialists and scientists within the industry. So our training budget wasn't actually quite big. So anytime you do go on an external training call, you have to write your case as to how it will benefit the company, not just yourself. So you can't just really say personal development. How does it work? How will it benefit the projects that you're going to work on, the clients that will come in, and etc. So I was able to build my case and go on this functional safety course. It was just a step forward to show them that I'm committed in the safety world. So with that, I did that, and then also experiences in different projects, more experience in the proposal work, so commercial side, not just the engineering side as well. And then I said to my line manager that I think I'm ready to be a senior consultant. And luckily he was accepting of that. But within Arcadis, you still have to go through an application and an internal interview. So I went through that process. And at the end of it, they were happy with the experience that I had showed, and they were happy to promote me to become a senior consultant, which was great. That was great. That was a tick in the box. But the next thing for me was, okay, I'm a senior consultant. What am I worth in terms of salary? So I did a bit of market research to kind of understand and know what sort of percentage increase you would get from a consultant to a senior within the railway industry, or within the safety world. And it was a segue. My line manager came up to me and said, okay, paperwork is done. You will get your formal letter and email and such, and your pay. And I was like, oh, speaking about pay, I did a little bit of research, and this is what I'm expecting, a certain percentage increase. And my line manager was actually taken aback a little bit, not negatively, just, oh, okay, so now we're talking about, negotiating salary. So my line manager actually said, okay, I would have to actually go back to the senior partners to discuss that, to see if that is something that we can allow. So obviously with that, my assumption was that they'd already decided what it is that I was getting, and it wasn't probably as high as what I'd asked for. So my line manager actually did go back, and fortunately I did get what I'd asked for, which was good. But it just kind of shows that, you have to speak up, you have to be confident, know your worth. It's not just, you have your performance, you have the quality of your work to show that you can do and this thing, and the expectation of being able to deliver this the level of work you're expecting as a senior. That's great, but also actually having the confidence to speak up, to actually say that, okay, yes, I can be a senior, and I've shown you that I can be a senior consultant, but obviously also, what can you give me in terms of salary and benefits and the package as well. So there were two sides of that, and that Women in Engineering course actually helped pave my way towards being the person I am actually. So going back to the mentorship, I didn't actually have a mentor, but I did go through like all of these training courses and kind of help my my personal development into where I am at the moment. So that's my story of how to just the advice of your career path and what it is that you want to do. Make sure that you speak up, make sure you are confident, make sure you have a plan, and even if you do ask and you speak up and you don't actually get what you want at that time, it could be external factors. It might not be about your performance, or if they think that you're not worthy enough to actually be whatever it is you want to be or where you want to go. It could just be the business plan at the time is not recommended for you to go into that line of work or promotion or whatever it is that you want to do with your career, because obviously you might not want to just stay in a certain sector or region. You might want to move across or move up or whatever. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't try again. Just make sure that you let your line manager or whoever know that, okay, I'm going to revisit this in so and so months. Make sure your portfolio, your experience, you keep writing down everything that you've done. Make sure you have evidence to back yourself up. And in those next few months, you speak up again and say, okay, it's been a few months now. I want to rediscuss what I asked about previously.
Can I just add to that, Zainab? Then I think what Zainab says is really valuable. It isn't just about the job you do. It's about telling people about what you do. It's about your brand and your organisation. Yeah. And it's also about your network of supporters. And I think Laura talked about this last time. I spoke to Laura, that there's some sort of statistic, and I don't know the exact numbers. Laura,
I do.
Do you? Right, well,
I do. Yeah.
Laura, I'm going to let you talk then. You're about one person to say exactly what I've said, Laura.
So the model Irum's talking about is the performance image exposure, which also spells pie model. And you'll be surprised that actually only 10% of any promotion is down to your performance. The other 60% is exposure. So what people know you do, or what people think that you do, is the reality. And the other 30% is around the image, how you brand yourself, what people think when you come to mind. Is it that you're hardworking? Is it that you're, an environmental specialist, or what is it that you're really good at, and what do you associate yourself with? So just to clarify, that 60% is what people think you're doing, and you talking about what you do so that others know. I think typically as women, we tend to put our heads down and make, it's no big deal, I don't want anyone to talk about me, or move on to the next person. No, you have to stand in your power, and you have to be able to hear what you've done. We're not saying to lie, just to actually be comfortable with what you've actually achieved. 30% then is how you come across in your interactions, and only 10% is actually whether you're good or bad at the job.
Yeah,
I just say I love that. Stand in your power. That's going to be my takeaway from this, Laura.
You're welcome, Irum.
It's just to close off on everything, thank you, Irum and Laura. Just like they said, make sure that you know your brand, know your worth, and speak up. It's really, really important. It's something that I've learned through my career, and speaking from experience, it's the best thing to do. Don't just think that your performance and what you're doing is just going to show. You have to speak up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing the model also, Laura. Zainab, thank you so much for your experiences. And I think for me personally, I think when I first joined the industry, it was quite easy for me as a young Asian Muslim woman to join the industry. Sort of be, yes, I'll do this. I remember a few years ago, one of our directors, he asked me to do something, and it was just a point where I had so much to do, and I realistically, I couldn't deliver what he was asking me to do. So my heart was like beating out my chest when I approached his office door, but I just went to my director and said, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I've got XYZ going on. And actually, a few minutes after I walked out of his office door, he said, thank you for being honest with me. I respect you for that. And I think from that conversation, our relationship has really grown. And I think we've broken down barriers a little bit. So absolutely knowing your worth, being realistic, and sort of finding your voice. It's not always easy. You do sort of need to put yourself out there, because no one is going to give you the platform unless you push yourself. So Zainab, actually, I'm really proud that you took the step and you sort of challenged your line manager and made him think, well, Zainab's not that yes girl. I need to take it a bit more seriously. And this woman has so much potential. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you. So thank you, really interesting discussions. We've got a few minutes until this sort of webinar closes. I'd like to sort of turn to the audience, and we picked up a few questions in the chat box. So I'll read out a few questions which Faiza has kindly shared with myself. So this first question is from Shaila. So Salam, has your organization helped you with career development opportunities as a woman within the railway industry, or do you have to be proactive? Open to anyone.
So I think it's a combination of both, Sultana. So you have to know what you want, and I think it's always helpful to say this is what would help in terms of my career development. So the organisation are aware of what you're looking for. But I think equally, I know us as an organisation, we will do things specifically, not just to help women in their career development, but men as well. And that will include things like chartership. It includes putting people forward for things like the Women Engineering Awards. So I think it's a combination of both. It's not one or the other, I don't think, would be my summary on that one.
Thank you, Irum. Anyone to add anything on that?
I think so. I think you need to, know where you want to go. A lot of the time it can be quite challenging to understand what's the next step to take if you've only achieved a certain level or you're not sure. So that's where a mentor or a coach or somebody that is a role model for where you would like to go can come in really handy, because you can understand their path. But also, if you I keep going back to knowing yourself, but if you know your own strengths and your own weaknesses, you'll be able to decide what would benefit you and how you can build upon your strengths as well as bring some of your weaknesses up a level. I think normally we tend to focus on our weaknesses, but actually what are our strengths, where are we really great, and how do we enhance those? So I think I think you have to be proactive, because somebody could tell you what to go on and it's just not right for you. So I do agree with Irum, it's got to be a mix.
Yeah, no, I agree with both Irum and Laura. For me, so the way that my team works is, it's really engineering. In the role industry, we're looking at design and the safety of design. So for me, it's I'm not really commercial. For example, I'm not really looking into the commercial risks or bringing into the business. I prefer actually just doing the project delivery. So for my experience in wanting to go up a level or know what next I need to do, don't think that you have to follow the person above you. Some people are very good marketers. Some people love talking to clients. Some people, like to put their head down and just do the project stuff. They're very technical. So just kind of understand within your industry and within your region what it is that you can actually do to get up to the next level as well, because it's not always that you have to follow exactly what is written down in the company. I keep going back to my specialist and scientist role. It's very unique in terms of compared to what else is going on in Arcadis. So it doesn't always fit in terms of like the development within it doesn't always fit to what I can or what another engineer can do. So just make sure that you understand what it is that you need to actually tick in your box to improve in terms of your career, and you don't have to do everything everyone else is doing, basically.
Thank you, Zainab. I think this nicely moves on to our next question. So the next question is from Zahra Zia. Would you say it's important to blend in with your team in order to be more involved or feel a sense of belonging? What do we do if their idea of a team outing or a fun day isn't what matches your values or culture?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, right? So historically, I think our industry was very focused on let's all go in a pub crawl together kind of thing. But I think as an industry, we are getting better educated around that. And so I don't know what other organisations do. Certainly when we're trying to do those team building events, we ask our team, what sort of events do you want? And, so sometimes it might be everyone go to the pub together. Sometimes it might be everyone do lunch together. Sometimes it might be an activity, but we try and get a range of different things so that people have an opportunity to network and get to know their colleagues, because it's really important, right? It's really important that you can take your whole self to work, but also that everyone else can bring their whole self to work and you get to know each other on a personal basis, because that creates a better team environment. So I don't think you have to compromise who you are, but if you think there are activities, actually, I'd quite like to do these, you should speak up and say, hey, why don't we go and do this instead? And so it's just something different. And then you get a mix of things that lots of people can do. And if you're feeling like, I don't want to do that activity, you're not going to be the only one feeling that. And that's irrelevant if you're Muslim, if you're female. There'll definitely be other people feeling the same way as you do. So have a voice and just talk about what it is that you'd quite like to do. And then you can opt out on a few things there are that you don't want to do.
Thank you, absolutely. And I think what's key in what you just shared with us is have a voice and make sure you're being heard. There's a high chance that if you're feeling some sort of way, a fellow colleague will be feeling the same sort of way. So make sure you're being heard. So thank you for that. Laura, I've noticed that you're unmuted. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's very much what Irum said. I think if you're going to take something off the table, put something back on it. So a lot of the time we tend to recommend things that we enjoy doing. So if that is culturally, we're in Britain, it's a culture to go out to a pub, it's a culture to go for a drink after work. So it's very natural and a knee-jerk reaction for people to get together. So, do share other options, do put on the table something else to do. And like Irum said, most people wouldn't mind doing something, may not want to do it every time, but they might, do it every other time, or try something different, because lots of people have lots of different interests, not everyone wants to go to the pub all the time. So yeah, I think it's really important to highlight why perhaps you might feel excluded, or why that you feel like, look, I'd really like to hang out with you guys, but this is just something that doesn't this is just not something I can do, but what I can do is this and this. Are any of these things a good option for us to do? If not this time, maybe next time. Maybe you have to take the role and say, I don't mind organising it for the first time. Really be as proactive as you can be to get the team to do something else that fits your values. But equally, I wouldn't say go along with it if it's not something you want to do. It's fine to say no. You don't have to go.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for that. So we've got a question from Michelle, which I think, Laura, you've answered in the group chat anyway. So can you just clarify where those pie statistics are found? And I think, Laura, you shared a link. And thank you, Michelle. You said that I'm finding this session really insightful. So thank you for your kind comment. Next question, and this is from Mahbuba. And quite interesting question, actually. Are women line managers better, or are they a hindrance? And do you think they may not let you progress as they feel like they see you as a competitor?
So I am a female line manager.
Me too. Yeah, I'm a female line manager too. So
do you know what? I don't think it's about gender. I think it's about the person. So I currently have a female line manager, and she is more ambitious for me than I am for myself. It's constantly, come on, Irum, get to the next level, And as far as she's concerned, she's trying to push me to a level above she's at. So I don't think it's about gender. I think it's just about the person. There are women who will want to hold you back, but there are men who will want to hold you back. That just exists, unfortunately, in a part of human nature. But I don't think it's gender related.
Sure, thank you.
No, I agree, Irum. I don't think it's a hindrance. For me. I'm hard on myself as well, and I make sure that when my role as a line manager, I'm helping the people below me get to the next level. So I don't want to be too emotional, or the kind of derogatory comments that people will talk about, that the women line managers, they'll be too emotional, they won't even be able to do the work or anything. But I think that's a ridiculous comment and a ridiculous thing to say. For any line manager, doesn't matter if you're male, female, whatever, as long as you do your role and do your job to ensure that the people that you are managing are developing to the extent that you feel like that they should be, stretch their goals, and just the normal stuff that you're supposed to do as a line manager. So I don't believe is a hindrance. So that's very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. And one very final question as we sort of end the session. So a question from Rachel. Salam, have you ever had an experience where you were the only Muslim in the office and felt uncomfortable praying, etc.? For example, your team doesn't make an effort to cater to your needs.
Oh, so can I take this one? So as I said, I wasn't always wearing a hijab. So I was probably, it wasn't something that they'd noticed, that if I needed to pray, I'll probably just work around them more. Then now I'd actually, whenever I'm going into an office, that's not my office, like I said, I travel to other offices and work on different projects. So when I do go into there, I go to the reception, and one of the first things I do ask is, do you have a prayer room? And most of the time they say yes, and there are a few times that they do say actually no. But what they've done for me is to set up a meeting room. So they just ask me, what times do you want to pray? And then we'll just set up a meeting room so that you can go in. You don't have to be worried about not having, somewhere to pray. They do try to accommodate you as much as possible. So I've been in an office where I'm the only woman. Not just a Muslim, So yeah, so if you're very into the practice, you make sure that you want to pray at a certain time. Just let them know. If you're in a meeting, just say that, oh, I'll be here 5 minutes, or try to work around your break time and to catch up with the prayers. It just depends on what you're doing in your schedule. But the first thing that you probably should do is, if you're going into an office, just ask if there is a place where you can actually do a prayer. And for me, if they don't have, they will just set up a meeting room for me. So they're very accommodating.
Sure.
And with this diversity inclusion that's going on at the moment, I think everyone's really trying to adopt this new way of working. Everyone's different. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And don't be afraid to sort of approach HR and sort of say, do you have a spare meeting or whatever? I remember in the early days of my career, a few of us Muslims, there's probably about 3 of us, we sort of got together and we approached HR together, and actually it wasn't something that they thought about. So unless we hadn't raised it with them, it wasn't on their radar. So again, find your voice and make sure that your voice is heard. So just really rounding up this really insightful event. Maybe I'm being biased because I'm hosting it, but absolutely really interesting. Loved hearing about your experiences from our panel speakers, but also really good questions from the audience. So thank you so much. Just to let everyone know, this session has been recorded and will be made available on the Muslim in Rail's YouTube channel. So please do check it out and do share with your family, friends and colleagues. Also, Muslims in Rail, our next event is taking place on the 22nd of March. Yes, here we go. So our next event is Sustainability and Spirituality, again taking place on Zoom. Please do check it out. Really, really interesting, with a great speaker and organised by a fellow Muslims in Rail champion. For those who are not already following Muslims on Rail on Instagram, LinkedIn, please do follow us for up-to-date information, more information on upcoming events. But also, if you want to have a chat with any of us, please feel free to. Thank you all so much for your time. And inshallah, see you guys soon. Assalamu alaikum. Take care, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Okay, walaikum salam. Bye, everyone.
Alaikum salam. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.